they were doing like $40,000 bonuses, which to a 23-year-old, $40,000. I mean, to most people, $40,000, like, that's freaking crazy.
Fantastic, Nathaniel. Thank you for doing this. I know we've had a little bit of back and forth with trying to get this scheduled, but I'm so happy we finally get to sit down and do this. And if you've watched any of the previous episodes, I want to showcase who my guests are, what they do, and how they can help people. So, with all that, let's get right into that first question. Who are you?
Whoa, man. I feel like is this like an anger management? Have you seen anger management question? No, who are you? No,
Right,
but
right.
who are you? Yeah. Well, I'm first and foremost, I'm a husband and a father of two little boys currently, one unknown at the moment on the way. Within the next month, we're gonna have a third, so we'll have three under four.
Well,
And then
congratulations.
yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm a Marine. Uh, so I served in the Marine Corps from 2003 to 2007, did a tour in Iraq. That plays a very big part in my current day, I guess, like both positively and negatively. And then I'm a real estate investor, entrepreneur. Um, yeah, that's kind of it in a nutshell. Uh, I
That's
invest in
that's
real estate, yeah, nationwide.
No, that's so cool. So I just finished editing the episode with Matt Findora, who also is a Marine. I think
Okay.
he spent about 11 years, I want to say, in the service. He's a flight traffic control agent now.
Okay. Yeah.
It's super cool stuff. And I'm Air Force by background, so this is so cool to have this kind of connection. So let's get back a little bit to the beginning. So how did you end up joining the Marine Corps? What motivated that? What was your life circumstance like? What happened?
Not great. I was going down a path that was not going to end well for me, and just I don't know if my dad made a phone call to the recruiting depot or if just the timing was perfect. But I came home one night from a place that I shouldn't have been, and the next morning my parents had to sit down with me and were like, "Hey, you need to make some changes." Literally the day after that, the recruiter called, and I was like, "I'll come in and have a conversation with you." And within 3 or 4 months, I was in boot camp.
Yeah,
Yeah, so it was just
you know,
like a
it's
timing thing.
I would agree with that. Like for me, it was I was my first year of medical school, and poor as dirt, and Sergeant Driscoll came and brought Papa John's for lunch. And next thing you know is I'm signing a contract with the U.S. Air Force. So
Yeah.
it's funny how they always find you in the right moment,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So that's awesome. What was your time like? Did you enjoy it? Did you get out of it what you wanted to get out of it? Did it help you turn your life around in the way that it should have, could have?
I I I would say net positive for sure. As far as the time in, there were times that were amazing and there are times that were just absolutely awful.
Yeah.
Um, there were times that you'd be out in the field or, out in Iraq and you were just up for like 3 days straight and miserable. But, net positive for sure. I think that it set me up to do a lot of things after the Marine Corps, and then immediately after the Marine Corps, and then kind of now where I'm at right, in my current life, I feel like a lot of the traits and things, the disciplines that I learned from the Marine Corps kind of help me out now, and just like dealing with a lot of the things after having gotten out have the skills that I've learned to deal with those help me deal with being an entrepreneur and kind of dealing with the ups and downs, the ebbs and
Yeah.
flows of that. Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. In '03 to '07 in Iraq was definitely kind of a shit show. So
Yeah.
you were there during you know, that was a very long summer in the sandbox.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah.
anyways, kudos to you for
Yeah. Thank you.
putting that time in,
Yeah.
getting
You as
through
well.
it, and
Yeah.
taking some positives out of it, right? And that's part of the reason I asked the question because I know a lot of people who've gone through some sort of military service that speak very negatively about it, and they just don't realize that. To some degree, it's just another job, and you get out of it what you put into it. And if you don't expect anything out of it, if you expect the government to do everything for you, you're not going to have a good time.
Yeah.
That's just simply the short gist of it. So I'm glad you did see some positives in that. So '07 comes, you separate, I take it at that point, and why? What happened? And what did you do?
But actually, I would have stayed in. Um, I had broken my wrist in like 2004, which actually prevented me from going on a tour to Iraq around that
Okay.
time frame. They they didn't know that it was broken. I
Mm.
went to Iraq, I came back and my hand, if you can see, like it was just wonky and I'm like, I don't think this is right. And so they ended up going, "Oh no, yeah, it's broken." They did some surgery on it. This was right before kind of I was supposed to be getting out. And I wanted to go back to Iraq and I wanted to re-enlist in Iraq and they were doing like $40,000 bonuses, which to a 23-year-old, $40,000, I mean, to most people, $40,000, like,
Yeah.
that's freaking crazy. But if you re-enlist in Iraq, it's tax free.
Mm.
And so I was like, oh, let me get back to Iraq. I'll re-enlist there. I'll get this tax-free bonus. I'll come back. I'll be freaking rich.
Yeah.
I'll like be able to retire. No, yeah. At the time, the Marine Corps was not sending anybody back to Iraq that had already been, or they weren't
Mm.
sending anybody on deployments that had already been, because like only 40% or 30% of the Marine Corps had deployed at that point. So they were trying to cycle through people through, and I'm like, well, if you're not going to send me back, like, what's the point of being in the Marine Corps? I'm just going to sit here back at base and like twiddle my thumbs and stuff. So I got out. I was a tank mechanic while I was in the Marine Corps. And so when I left, I had the intention of going and being a mechanic. And so I went to a technical school, Universal Technical Institute, for becoming a mechanic. I did that for a year and 2 months or something like that. Got out. I did a bunch of odd jobs, mechanicking and other things like that before finding myself at mechanical engineering school at Cal State Long Beach. And that's where I ultimately met my wife, and like one thing leads to another, 3 kids.
Yeah.
Yada yada
Yeah.
yada. Yeah.
Totally right. That's definitely the short version of things. It's
Yeah.
definitely being a tank mechanic is not a skill that directly translates into the civilian world.
Right.
Just I can
Yeah.
totally see that.
I thought it
Uh,
would.
yeah.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is, a lot of people who leave the military find themselves in this position where they have certain skills from the military, like being a tank mechanic or a weapons handler, for example.
Yeah.
And these skills don't directly translate to a civilian job,
Right.
and you find yourself trying to really find yourself at that point, right? That's why so many people go to so many different odd jobs. How can I utilize the skills that I've learned in the civilian side of things? So I'm kind of curious about your perspective there. What were you able to translate from the military experience into the civilian world, and how did that really affect your trajectory in the long run as well?
Yeah. Early on, not much. I was still pretty young in the grand scheme of things, right? 23, I think, when I got out, and but was feeling like I was 18 in a sense because I kind of missed those like college years, right? You join the Marine Corps, and well, a lot of the same things happen, just being young and dumb in the Marine Corps as they do in college. I had seen a lot of my friends from high school that went and had these college experiences. So I did kind of those similar things when I got out. Did college experience type of things, and I would say that the things that went well were like I still got up and went to work and worked hard. Like that was something that the Marine Corps had instilled in you. Like when you show up and you do what is expected of you, right? So as a worker, I did fairly well there, but outside of work, I wasn't trying to learn anything new. I wasn't really trying to grow my skills and my knowledge. I sure as heck wasn't thinking about future me and saving and investing and things like that. So if that was if I could go back and tell 23-year-old Nathaniel, hey, like, go have fun, but like there's some things that you need to be doing to set yourself up for success in the future, especially as kids are about to happen. So
Right.
yeah, I
Right.
mean, from the like the biggest thing I think would be just the discipline, like show up, do what is expected of you, and do it to the best of your ability, and good things will kind of slowly happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So you do all those odd jobs, and then you went to university to get an engineering degree. Did I catch that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what's the path there? How long did you do engineering? What was your aspirations, your dreams, your hopes, and what ended
Yeah,
up happening?
well, a- as as I was getting as I was doing mechanicking more, I realized like, okay, this isn't the path for me, like long term. I had always been really good at math and sciences and those kinds of things as I was younger, and I actually, it's funny, I was at a I was at a job as a mechanic, and I got the opportunity to go on a trip with my family to Italy for like 10 days or something. And the employer that I had was like, "Oh, well, like you're fired, essentially. We're not going to keep your job for you. Like you should just give me 10 days off. It's going to take you longer to find a new employee." But for whatever reason, they didn't want to keep my job. Maybe I wasn't as good of an employee as yeah.
Who
But
knows?
I kind of took stock in like, okay, what do I want to do going forward when I come back from this trip? And so, I like the mechanics, I like the vehicles and things like that, but I thought that, there's something a little bit higher purpose for me, so to speak. And so mechanical engineering, put them together. I had, I forget what they called it at the time, but like the GI Bill from the military. So I knew that I could go to school and it wasn't going to be a financial burden for me. And so when I got back from that trip, I essentially started as a mechanical engineer. It was going back to community college because after I kind of left that part out. When I got out of high school before I joined the Marine Corps, part of that not good phase was I went to community college so I could play sports essentially and did not do well in school. So I had to go back to community college and like redo a bunch of classes that I had done very poorly the first time. So I did 2 years at a community college and then I did 2 years at Cal State Long Beach, graduated as a mechanical engineer, and the only thing is I have to show for it is a piece of paper because I never used it. I didn't use it one bit.
I, I could relate to that. I have a lot of very, very expensive paper hanging on my wall
Yeah.
that doesn't even fit the rest of the decor sometimes.
Right.
It just,
Yeah.
expensive things that I've done in my past. So I can relate
Yeah.
to that. But you got into real estate then. So what was that transition like? How did you come to find real estate, and what intrigued you by it? How did that come about?
Yeah. It's kind of a funny story is that my dad planted this little seed. Um, I don't know if your audience out there does like direct to seller, things like that. But we're always trying to plant little seeds in people's minds. So in the future, we can come back to them and that seed is able to grow and then we can come back to it. My dad planted the real estate seed when I was young. And oddly enough, when we were playing Monopoly, I was for some
Perfect game
reason
for that.
really good. Yeah, I was really good at Monopoly somehow. And he was like, "You're good at Monopoly. You should be in real estate." Because those are super transferable. If it was as easy as just rolling the dice and landing on boardwalk right all the time. But I ended up, as I was in college, I had saved a bunch of money. I finally got my wits about me. So like, oh, say start saving money. And I had bought a condo in Southern California in Garden Grove, and I thought I was going to sneeze. Sorry, I didn't want to sneeze into the
No,
microphone.
no
Um,
problem.
Nope. Fine. Nope. Okay. The condo, by the time I graduated college, the condo had appreciated. And I knew that I didn't want to stay in California. Brittany, my wife, girlfriend at the time, I made that very clear with. And so when we graduated, we moved to Oklahoma. We kind of just like went like this on a map and chose Oklahoma. And so I was able to sell this condo in California and I had this big chunk of money from the sale of it. Like, oh, real estate. It all kind of came that little seed that my dad had planted came kind of flushing back to me like, oh, this may be a thing that I can do. Like long term and like build some wealth and build some income and actually like focus. I'm 32 at the time, 40 now. Yeah, 32 at the time, something like somewhere in that range. And so we bought a we bought this house in Oklahoma that we thought was going to be our primary residence. It was a starter 3-2, but it was on 7 acres outside of on the outskirts of Oklahoma City. It was going to be our we left California to kind of spread our wings first home. And about 2 weeks before we're supposed to close on this thing, Brittany gets a great engineering job an hour and a half away. So we're like, oh, darn it. Okay, what do we do now? We make it an investment property. So I fixed this property up. I did from ceiling to floors. I rehabbed the entire thing myself. It was basically my job at the time. Go rehab this property, and we ended up renting it out for 3 years, as we were living in Oklahoma, and that kind of got me started in real estate, and it got me motivated to start going direct to seller. I did not, I had a good realtor when we bought that property, but I'm a little bit of a control freak in the sense that I don't want other people involved if they don't absolutely need to be.
Right.
So I didn't know it at the time, but I did some research and figured out like, oh, you don't have to have a realtor
That's
to
right.
buy real estate. You can go directly to the seller, and like realtors are great. They serve a purpose. But I have a realtor as a buyer. I talk to the realtor, and then the seller has a realtor, and so they have to talk. And so like if you've ever played telephone, like things get lost in communication.
Yeah.
My realtor has an agenda and desires and hopes and dreams of their own. Their realtor has an agenda and hopes and dreams of their own. So like all the information doesn't get crossed
Right.
or passed. So I started going direct to seller with the intent of buying more properties. Ended up getting properties that I wasn't interested in buying. And so we like again, I didn't know at the time like what the heck do I do? I did some research and went to some real estate meetups and found out, oh, you can like take this agreement that you have with the seller and just give it to somebody else and essentially sell it to somebody else. Oh, wholesaling. So I started wholesaling properties, and it took me about 7 years to stop doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a first step into real estate for many people is wholesaling, right? And on the topic of the telephone game that you had mentioned, I'm sure you've had that same experience with realtors, especially in the creative finance world. If you ask the realtor, do you think your sellers are interested in any sort of creative financing? The answer is always right off the bat, no.
You're right.
And if you ask them what it actually means, what creative financing actually means to them, either they don't know or they think it's assuming the mortgage. It's just
Right.
one of those two. It is so rare to find a real estate agent that actually truly understands all the aspects of creative financing that are available to investors, which
Yeah.
makes the direct to seller model so much more efficient, even in this business. So
Yeah.
that makes perfect sense. So how long have you been at it with real estate now?
Yeah. I mean, I technically started in 2016 with that investment property that we purchased in Oklahoma.
Okay.
Now, I started going direct to seller at that time, but I was very, very passive. So while I have 8 years of experience, 8+ at this point, um, I really wasn't active until about 2020, where it was like, okay, I started with direct mailers, like sending direct mailers out and just sitting back and waiting for the phones to ring is not a business. Like that's a side gig at best. A hobby probably really is what I had going on. During that time, I was still doing like odd jobs. I valeted, I like cleaned buses, I did all these different things, just 2 months of this, 2 months of that, just to kind of, I, I found value in it that I gained a lot of experience. I met a lot of people. I made money, of course, but it wasn't like progressing my needle.
Yeah.
Again, you don't know what you don't know. Like if I could go back and say, hey, Nathaniel, like you're going to have kids someday and you're not going to have all this time in the world. Like maybe you should be a little bit more proactive about it. But um, I started really like kind of full time in like 2020.
Okay.
Um, yeah, being just more proactive, being a little bit more of a business owner than, just a hobbyist.
No, that's fair. So, what I want to ask you about is who is real estate for? And let me qualify where I'm coming at it from this. Uh, there's a lot of people out there who are in similar circumstances as yours. You go from job to job, and you just try to find your way. And if you Google, just do a simple Google search, how do I get out of my job? Right? 90% of the results are going to be related to real estate.
Mm.
So I think, at least from my experience with other real estate investors, or at least people who call themselves real estate investors, there's a lot of people who go into real estate with maybe some false assumptions about what real estate investing really is like. And to some degree, that was even me when I first started doing some real estate investing myself. Um, and what I find is, I think that is the result of maybe like I said, false advertisement. But the result of that ends up being that, I would say 80-90% of people who call themselves real estate investors have zero doors, right?
Mm.
They're hanging out in some forum online, in a Facebook group, listening to all the podcasts, reading all the books, but never actually doing anything with the information.
Yeah.
So, which then I think begs the question that I just asked you. Who is real estate investing really for? Like, who should really, pursue real estate investing then as an idea, as a concept, whether as a side gig or as a full-time gig?
Yeah, that's that's a tough one. Because there are the people that are just getting started out, like think 19, 20-year-old that want ultimately to grow a portfolio. And you can get started with the really low hanging fruit. And I say that really loosely of wholesaling, um, knowing that like it's going to be a grind. Most people that get started in real estate get started in wholesaling. Like you don't get a deal for the first 3 to 6 months. And that's something that you got to wrap your head around if you're going to get started. So that's not to say that you could make your very first phone call and the person is super motivated and you just happen to say all the right things and you lock up a deal and you make $10,000 on percent. It happens. Just super rare.
Right.
Um, right. This like the this the process is what really you should be going after is building the skills, building the like stopping yourself just from being super nervous and your heart rate going and sweating that as soon as you start to pick up the phone to make calls, like all these things are what builds you a career over time. Uh, and to go back to the who's real estate for question, like there's those people, and then there's the people that are making, $250,000 a year that I'm 45, I'm 50, and I want to just be out of my W-2 in 5 or 10 years and be able to own real estate and not have to worry about it. There's those people as well. And for those people, there's, private money partnerships, private money lending, things that you can do that are extremely passive that only take, 1 to 3 hours a week of your time where you're just kind of getting some deals that have already been pre-vetted for you and you just do your due diligence on. Like real estate's for those people too, right?
Yeah.
And I guess to go, those people are one thing they're in a category, but like if you're going to be more of an active, there's so many different ways that you can be involved in real estate. Like just from the wholesaling standpoint, you don't have to be on the phone calling direct to seller or direct to agent. You could just be the person on the back end, like figuring out who is gonna like who to call, who to text. You could be the coordinator of transactions, and so when people get a contract in and they go assign it, right, whether it be cash or creative, you can be the person talking to the title company and the closing attorney and being the go between the seller and the buyer, right? Coordinating the transaction. There's just a lot of different ways that you can like what is it? Skin a cat
Yeah, yeah,
in,
yeah.
in real estate. Yeah. So
Yeah.
really real estate can be for anybody, but like I want to go back to the wholesaling thing. Like it's it's not a get rich quick scheme. It is a get rich slow
Yeah.
scheme, right? You have to You have to have a very clear vision of where you're going to go 5, 10, 20 years from now, and be willing to be putting in work when you're not seeing results. When you're not seeing, yeah, not seeing results is not the best way to put it, but not seeing results from a deal necessarily standpoint. And this, I don't know if you want to go into like mindset right here, or if you have a, because there's
No,
a good
no,
segue. Yeah.
the mindset definitely is a good segue, and
Yeah.
actually, what was first on my mind, alongside the mindset side of things, right? So you kind of covered it a little bit earlier, but knowing what you know now, what would you have told your younger self as you were starting out in real estate, or what would you be telling other people who are just getting curious or interested in real estate about the business and what's involved and what their mindset really should be in order to be successful in that space?
Yeah. Yeah. Like pick one thing, learn a little bit to a medium amount of bit about it, and then just go start doing it because that's the best way that you can learn. If you want to go direct to seller, like figure out a framework for how you're going to have the conversation and then go start having the conversation. You're going to suck right off the bat. And that's what it's about. It's about going and sucking and then like listening to your calls, going and having other people listen to your calls, talking to other people about your calls. And like a month later, you're not going to suck as bad.
Yeah.
3 months later, you're definitely not going to suck as bad, right? It's the action that compounds over time that leads to the results that you're trying to get. And so, like I said it, like you're not going to get a deal within that first day, week, month, 3 months a lot of the times. But knowing that being able to look back and say 3 months from now, I was freaking terrified to pick up the phone. And as soon as the seller said hello, and I was like, hi, I'm calling about 123 Main Street, they hung up on me because that's not how you should approach the conversation, whatever. Like 3 months ago, that was where I'm at. And now today, I'm having meaningful conversations with people and I'm actually getting information out that I can actually go buy a house. Right. So being able to look back and say, well, I am growing, I am getting better. And because I took action every single day and I did one thing and I was focused on one thing.
Yeah.
A lot of the times I see, especially in when people come into like the sub two community or like the creative finance community, they're like, I want to go direct to seller. And they make a week's worth of phone calls and they don't see any results. They're like, okay, I'm going to go direct to Asia. And then okay, I'm going to do transaction coordinate. Okay, I'll do capital raising. And they just move along the line and they have never given themselves a chance to build up those skills
Yeah.
and those habits and those, right? So you got to give yourself at least 3 months. I tell everybody, like, if you're starting out, pick something and do it for 3 months. And after 3 months, look back and say, am I enjoying this? Did I learn anything? Have I grown at all? Do I want to do another 3 months?
Yeah.
Only at that point should you be pivoting.
You know,
Yeah. So
no, no, that's great. That's absolutely fantastic. And I want to come back to the mindset stuff that you had mentioned a few minutes ago. Um, Not everybody goes through the Marine Corps and comes out with that work discipline that you have. So for the people who don't have that military experience, right? That rigid hierarchy, the discipline that you show up and just do the best you can every day. It doesn't matter how good you are, it doesn't matter who you are, you're just gonna show up and do it, right? So, uh, what about the people that don't have that experience? How can, or what recommendations do you have for them to build that kind of mindset, to build that kind of discipline in order to be successful? And maybe as an extension to that question, what are you still doing for yourself these days in order to maintain that sharp mindset, that
yeah,
discipline for yourself?
I, I am a very big fan and proponent, I think, of time
Yeah.
blocking. And time blocking, like all different facets of my life that I want to cultivate or that I have cultivated. I time block reading, I time block exercise, I time block dad time, and of course I time block work time, right? You can put anything you want on your calendar and then it's up to you to stick to the calendar. I forget who it was that like I think it might have been Brandon Turner from Bigger Pockets talking about his calendar and holding himself accountable for it. Like, if you're a huge basketball fan and you got the chance to sit down with Michael Jordan for lunch, would you keep that appointment? Like, heck yeah, you would keep that appointment. Now, in the grand scheme of things, is sitting down for lunch with Michael Jordan going to affect your life really that much at all?
Probably
No,
not.
no, right? But like, is reading a book every day and keeping that appointment with yourself, or setting aside an hour to talk to sellers every day, is that going to affect your life and affect your goals and your dreams? Heck yeah. So like, when we put something on our calendar like that, we should hold ourselves accountable to it. We should keep that appointment for ourselves, because that's what's going to affect our life. So
Right.
I'm a huge fan of time blocking. And, for a lot of people out there when they're getting started, they have W-2s. And, you go to work 8 hours a day. It takes you an hour to travel back and forth. So that's like 9 hours your day blocked off. Well, if you can just do 30 minutes or an hour every day, that's going to add up over time. And so put it on your calendar and do it every single day. Do it at the same time. Do it in the same location if you can, right? Under this as similar circumstances as you can. That way you can just focus on the one thing.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think that answers your question.
No, that's fantastic. I'm a huge fan of my calendar. If it's not on my calendar, it doesn't get done. So I'm a huge fan of that as well.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing you mentioned too is the environment has to be right. You're not going to do a multi-million dollar real estate transaction while you're trying to, squat weights at the gym, right? So
Right.
the environment has to be right. And
Yeah.
in the same way that, that's obviously a drastic example, but if you set yourself up for success, right? If you're going to try to do this real estate thing while you're at the busiest Starbucks in town, you're going to be too distracted to really focus and get it done right. So you
Right.
really need to set yourself up with the right environment. And like I said, that environment being consistent, I mean, that's just a Pavlovian response. Then over time,
Yep.
your brain then connects that environment with your work, and you get into the habit, into the thinking patterns that you need to be in much faster as well. So I think those are all fantastic examples of how to set yourself up for success. Now, for me, from with stuff that I do, I would add to that, if you cannot do it by yourself, you can exponentially speed up the process if you hire a good coach. Simple as that, right? And
Yeah.
if you hire a good coach, you can exponentially speed up your process of going through that, because now you have somebody who can show you the way, and shortcut you to many of these different steps, instead of you trying to have to figure out by either reading 100 books a year or listening to all the podcasts and going to all the shows, right?
Yep.
So you can definitely shorten that time frame if you work with a good coach.
100%.
Um, Actually, one of my very first clients as a coach was a real estate investor. I love this story so much, and it was all about mindset. I asked her, what are you trying to get out of this? And her request was simple. I want to be a successful real estate investor. And I asked her what that meant. And she essentially was trying to get to the level of Pace Morby, Jamil Damsey, right? Brandon Turner, right? Those big names. And I asked her at that point, how many doors do you have right now? 15. I was like, wow, you have 15 doors and you don't consider yourself a successful real estate investor.
Mm.
And so I asked her, how many doors do you think most people with real estate investing, who call themselves real estate investors have? And she said, well, probably 0 or 1. Okay, that's probably fair.
Yeah.
What percentage of people who call themselves real estate investors only have 0 or 1 doors? And she guessed 85%. I said that, it's probably realistic. So by your own assumptions here, that 85% of real estate investors only have 0 to 1 doors, and you having 15, you're already in the top 15% of real estate investors,
Yeah, probably even more than
right?
that.
So, no, right? But that was just trying to, even just with her, connecting those thoughts, her own thoughts, that helped her break through. She's incredibly prolific in Detroit right now. I mean, she's really turning that city around, doing some marvelous work. Still doing a lot of the renovations herself, though, which is probably slowing her down a little bit. But
Yeah.
really, the houses that she is recovering and rehabbing is truly beautiful. Following her on Instagram, it's just amazing what she is doing to Detroit. So cool stuff. Anyways, I sidetracked. What I want
No,
to
you're
get
good. Yeah.
to no, I want to get to know a little bit more about you. And I'm going to ask you some questions out of my Simple Networking Tool book. It's a book that
Okay.
I published probably about a year ago. It's based sort of like an old school friendship journal where you have a bunch of questions to answer for your friends. But the idea is you fill out your section instead of handing it back to the person who gave it to you. You actually hand it to another person who does the same thing and hands it to another person, another person, another person. So it creates this sort of chain of interesting people, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Would you
and
mind actually before we did that though? If I,
Yeah.
cause you mentioned the coaching thing, and that's something that's really near and dear to me,
Oh,
is
please
because yeah, because
share your thoughts.
I would not be where I'm at and doing what I'm doing if I hadn't gone through the different coaching programs that I've been through. I've been
Yeah.
through very focused real estate related ones where it was just like, here's how you flip remotely, or here's how you do direct mail, right? To the big broader ones like Sub 2, where it's not so much a coaching program or a mentorship as it is a lot of different things,
Right.
and personal development coaching. Like I am a big proponent, and you kind of mentioned it, like paying for somebody's expertise and speeding up the process of where you can be at. If it's going to take me 3 years to learn something, but I can pay somebody and learn it in a month or 3 months, I should be doing it every time. And that's something that I would go back and tell myself that when I was younger as well. It's just like, you can't, like, what's the cost of not doing it, of not
Yes.
paying for somebody's expertise, right? So
Right.
I just thought maybe I could put my own
No,
spin
that's
on what you said.
that's
Yeah.
beautiful. And I'll follow that up with where even come from as a coach. Until probably about 3 years ago, I was under the assumption that coaches were swindlers and snake oil salesmen, and who needs a coach anyways, right? Because that's how I was raised. That's what I heard in my house growing up. And it wasn't until I listened to Bigger Pockets, and Brandon Turner was the host at the time, talking about his coach, Jason Dries. And my first question was, why is this self-made multimillionaire investing in coaching? That makes no sense, right? Who needs a coach? And so that's when things started turning around. And then I started, receiving coaching myself at that point, and I could do in 4 months of coaching what I wasn't able to do in 4 years of my own self development. Right. So it's something that exponentially sped up my own personal development. Now I still have ways to go myself, but I saw the magic and the power that having a good coach by your side can really have on accelerating your own personal development. So yeah, no, I'll second everything you said there. So that's awesome. Cool. I love it. So, anyways, I want to ask you some questions out of the book. Some of them are kind of quirky and some of them kind of fun. But
Okay.
I have to ask this first question only because I asked Matt Condora that same question a few weeks ago. He's also a Marine. Um, the Marines obviously travel. You've been to Iraq, but what is the place you haven't been to yet that you really want to visit?
Oh yeah, Japan. That's easy. I really
Okay,
want to
what's
go
in
to Japan.
Japan? Well, what's in
Yeah,
Japan?
well, Um, first off, sushi. I really love like real sushi, and that's where it comes from, like the concept of it. And so, going and eating sushi there, but just the history there, the architecture. I really like the way their architecture is, from designing things very precisely. A lot of their, like no screws and bolts and nuts and
Yes.
things like that. And like just the beauty of that. And um, I would love to go in 2 different seasons actually, because I think that the winter there, from what I've seen, like the mountains and things like that they have there are just incredibly beautiful. So
Yeah.
yeah, for those reasons, Japan is. And if you asked my wife, Brittany, where I want to go, she would know for sure. That would. There's probably not a lot of things where we could do like a newlywed type of game, thing on, and we'd have success with, but that would be one of them for sure.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with the woodworking, especially in Japan. I'm a hobby woodworker myself, and
Okay.
the way they put things together, especially their hand built buildings, from what I've seen, is just
Yeah.
absolutely stunning.
Yeah.
And I'm sure your engineering brain is going haywire too, looking at all this
Yeah.
stuff. So
Yeah.
it's definitely cool stuff, no doubt, no doubt. But so you mentioned the different seasons. So I'm going to change my second question now that I was going to ask you. You mentioned the different seasons. Obviously, you've been in the Marines as well. So would you rather take a cold shower on a hot day or a hot bath on a cold day?
Um, I for the growth side of me things, I'm gonna go cold. Because it's actually something I do every single morning, is like it's kind of the last thing I do before as my morning routine is take a cold shower. It's really good for your body, your hair, your skin, things like
Yes.
that. But it's also
Yes.
like literally every morning I have to psych myself up. All right, it's gonna be freaking cold. This is gonna suck for like 5 seconds, but then you kind of get used to it. Just doing that kind of uncomfortable thing. So I'll go with cold shower.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I agree with the cold showers. I actually enjoy cold showers myself. I mean, my girlfriend, she showers like with boiling hot water that I
Yeah.
cannot
Yeah.
stand. And so, I shower on the colder side of the spectrum. And yeah, that first shock is always like, do I really want to do it? But once you're
Yeah.
in it, once you get into it, it's not bad. Actually, feels really refreshing.
Yeah.
That's why I enjoy it. All right, my last question for you in this segment is quite simply: would you rather have a dog that meows or a cat that barks?
I'm a dog person, so dog.
The
I would.
dog that meows.
Yeah, the cat would have to do some extraordinary things for me to choose a cat. Yeah. Not nothing to cat people out there. Like I just am a dog person. But and it's funny because I grew up. My mom loves cats. My mom loves all animals, but I grew up with cats all the time. But yeah, I'm a dog person.
All right, that's fair. That works. This next question comes to you from the previous guests on the show. Every guest has the opportunity to ask the next guest a question, not knowing who the person is, what they do, or what we're even going to be talking about. So,
Okay.
but what is really interesting is the vast majority of the time, like 95% of the time, the question is asked to the right person. And you've already alluded to the answer to this question a little bit. But let's get more specifically into it. So, Scott Raven wants to know, what did you want to be when you were 7 years old? And looking at today, what are things about that you say you're actually still doing nowadays?
I'm not 100% sure if this is the right answer for when I was 7, because two come to mind. At one point, I wanted to be a lumberjack, but I think that was when I was younger. A firefighter is what I would say. I think that I wanted to be when I was younger. I mean, besides being like a professional basketball player or something like that, that a lot
Yeah.
of little kids do. Wait, what was the second
Yeah.
part of the question? Yeah.
What are you still doing nowadays um, that relates to that, besides wearing the right outfit to be a
Yeah,
lumberjack?
Brad. Yeah, yeah. Probably, yeah. I mean, from the lumberjack perspective, like being outside and being outdoorsy and like going and we live in the woods and the trees, so I do a lot of stuff with wood, that kind of stuff. From the fire, probably nothing really firefighter wise. I guess kind of a conservation standpoint. I do a lot of just trying to be efficient with the things that we use and conserving water and food and things like that. We do homestead a little bit out here. We're trying to iterate on that, but being entrepreneurs first, there's not a whole lot of time for the homesteading side of things, but we
No,
do a little bit of it. Yeah.
that's very true. Entrepreneurism can really take over your life in
Yeah.
many good ways and also in
Yeah.
many overwhelming ways. All
Yeah.
right, Nathaniel, it's your opportunity to ask the next guest a question, not knowing who that person is, what they do, or where the conversation's even going. But the floor is yours.
Yeah. This is one I ask on my podcast a lot, and it does elicit some interesting responses. Is once your time on this earth is done, you've passed on, you've gone to wherever you believe you go after you have died. What do you want to be remembered for by the people that you left behind?
That's a powerful question. One of the sort of mindset coaching questions that relates a little bit to that is that I use for my clients when they have a difficult decision to make, right? And actually, one of our fellow SUP2 students had a similar situation a few months ago where he was like, should I do this entrepreneurial gig that's been a side gig for me, or should I stay in the safe W2 lane for a little bit longer, right? And the question, quite simply, is imagine yourself 40, 50, 60 years from now, however depending on how old you are, on your deathbed, surrounded by all your friends and family, and your death is imminent, and you're thinking back about your life and all the moments you're proud of and what you want to be remembered for. which decision right now would make you more proud? Which decision would make you feel more fulfilled in that moment, right?
Yeah.
So very similar. So I love it. That's fantastic. It's a great question. I'll be sure to ask the next guest, whoever that person is going to be.
Yeah. I look forward
Fantastic.
to it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too. Me too. I always do. I always do. And like I said, the interesting thing is these questions always seem to be asked to the right person. So,
Yeah.
with very, very few exceptions. Anyways, how can people get in touch with you? How can they connect with you? How can they work with you if they so desire?
Yeah, the best place is actually my name here, nathanielhovsepian.com. Spelled, yeah, it's spelled right. If you just go www.nathanielhovsepian.com, all my socials that I'm on and active are there. If you're a newer real estate investor or you're in a business right now and you're just kind of feeling stuck, there's resources for that. I do hold a Zoom every Thursday designed to help people get unstuck. I'm not selling anything there. It's just something that I provide. I feel like I've been given to so much by people freely over my career so far, and I want to be able to continue to do that and serve people. My podcast is on there. Mine's pretty real estate investor focused at the moment. We do those live on Wednesdays at noon. That's on there as well. Yeah, that's kind of it, man.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I'll make sure all those links are in the description below so people can just click on it and connect with you very readily. So, any final last words from you to the world?
Yeah, I really am a big fan since I've read this book, The Gap and the Gain, focusing on the gain and not focusing on the gap. Like there's always goals there's always things that we're striving for, and a lot of the times they're going to seem out of reach and it's going to seem like we're not making progress to them and you're going to be like, well, I'm not where I want to be yet. But being able to look back, and I kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, and go, look at all I've gained as I've been putting in the effort towards realizing, towards my goals. It really helps your mindset when things are going wrong. I like to, I'm a real estate investor, so like a contract falls out, right, or something, a tenant destroys your house. Oh man, this is the worst thing ever. Yeah, but look what we've gained.
Yeah.
I gained experience, I gained knowledge, have a property that I didn't have previously, right? All these things that you can look back and kind of gain.
No, that's awesome. That's fantastic. I love it. That's actually a great way of looking at it, right? Looking at that gap.
Yeah.
That's fantastic perspective. I love it. Well, listen, thank you so much for being here today. This was amazing. I love the conversation. Thanks for taking the time and playing along.
Thank you for having me, brother. It was a pleasure.